I think his legacy will live on in show jumping for many, many years to come. There will never be another John Whitaker.
Hi guys, welcome to a picturesque corner of the Sèvres region of France, where I'm just 2 minutes away from the charming home of author Sarah Peacocke. Following the launch of her latest book, John Whitaker, The Legend, I'm absolutely thrilled to announce that she's agreed to do an interview for my YouTube channel. Let's dive into the process behind writing a book about an absolute equestrian legend, and perhaps we're going to learn more about the man himself, John Whitaker. Let's go! I should imagine that all equestrians of a certain age have rushed out to buy the book. How has the book been? How's the success so far?
Well, I think it's been amazing. It's surpassed all of our expectations. I think we've sold over 10,000 copies so far, and the interesting thing is that they've gone literally all over the world. They've gone to Australia, New Zealand, places like Colombia, the Philippines, America, Canada, and obviously a lot in the UK, and also in Ireland, and also Europe.
So it just really emphasises what a worldwide legend John Whitaker is.
Yes, I think he is, and I think his name conjures up all sorts of memories for a lot of people. I mean, myself, I used to have posters of Milton and Ryan's son on my bedroom walls as a child.
Yeah.
And I grew up in that era.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's John and Milton. You know,
yeah.
It's...
I think it is for a lot of people, but that's probably where a lot of people started following him.
Yeah.
So now they do follow him with the horses that have gone through the years with him. You know, you can remember horses like Wellham, Gammon, Grenouche, Peppermill, and obviously at the moment Sharid and Unique de Frankfort.
Yeah, I mean, for me, as a Milton fan, it was a real eye-opener to go back through all of the other successful horses that perhaps have been in the shadow of, you know, Milton and Ryan's son. So for me, that was a really interesting part of the book. But going back to how successful John has been, it does leave me wondering why it's taken so long for a book to be written. And I'm assuming, rightly or wrongly, that one of your first challenges was actually getting John to agree to the book.
Yes, it was. It was very interesting. I took a group of people up to the yard for a yard visit, probably about 2.5 years ago now. And I had a throwaway line at the time and said to John when I left, you know, would you let me write your biography? And a bit flippantly he said yes.
Oh, okay.
And then it went on ice for about 18 months because we'd moved to France, to the property where we are now. We were very busy. I didn't have time, basically, to put the effort into it. When I did have time, I went back to him and to Clare, his wife, and said, you know, could I now do the book? And the answer was no, John doesn't want to do it. And I really struggled, to be honest, for probably about 4 or 5 months to get him to agree. Now, people say, why didn't he want to do the book? And I think there were 2 main reasons. I think one, honestly, is that he's so humble that he just didn't believe anybody would be interested in his story. He didn't think there was anything unusual or special about it.
And I think that really comes across in the book.
Yeah.
John's character as a whole.
Yeah, and I think, secondly, he imagined me following him around with a microphone to all the major shows and getting in his way, basically, when he was trying to do his job.
Yeah.
I had a lot of support in writing the book, in that, we'll come on to it later, I know, but my children, or one of my children, had grown up with John, with John's children, had jumped on teams with Robert. So I knew John and Clare very well, and I knew his children well. Obviously Robert, Joanne and Louise. They were all very supportive of me doing the book. They wanted the book written, they felt it should be written, and they kept saying to their dad that if somebody was to write it, it should be me, because I know them and I'd worked with John previously, which we'll talk about in a minute. So I came up with an idea and a way of doing it that I think appealed to him. And basically we had a chat every Monday or Tuesday night throughout the writing of the book on Zoom. So I didn't have to be following him around, I didn't have to be at his house. Obviously on occasions I was. We did quite a lot of face-to-face interviewing, but the majority of it was done on a Zoom call. And he would finish on the farm. He'd be back from a show on a Monday or Tuesday. He'd have his dinner, and at 8 o'clock we'd sit down and talk.
And he was able to set that time aside without it interrupting his day-to-day activities.
And it was very interesting because our conversations to begin with, I think I could say for the first month, was somewhat stilted. John isn't known, he's known for being a man of few words, which was something I wanted to dispel in the book as well, because I really wanted to get his personality across in the book. And I even had his best friend, like Jeff Billington, saying to me, gosh, how on earth are you talking to John for 2 hours?
Yeah.
Because we did talk for 2 hours, and even longer on occasions.
Wow.
But I think what really helped was that I understood show jumping.
You had that background knowledge.
Yeah, and I'd been around through the Ryan Son, Milton, and so on eras. So I could I could ask sensible questions, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
I didn't waste his time asking daft questions. I think the book would have to have been written by somebody who understood show jumping. But I think also, I think that John got so engaged with the book as we started writing it together, that really helped, because it was bringing memories back to him, frankly, that he'd forgotten as well.
I can imagine,
and stories that other people told me that I interviewed, that then I went back to him with and said, do you remember when this happened? And then we would have a longer conversation about it.
Yes. What do you feel was the most challenging part of writing the book? Was it John?
Yes, I think it was John, and I think a lot of people have been very surprised by how much information and how much information I got from John, basically. The book is absolutely his story. It's not anybody else's story.
No.
And I hope that comes across. And I was very determined that I wanted to achieve two things. One was to get his personality and his character out there, and the second to do as much as I could about his training and his beliefs and what has made him so successful, and so successful still today. I mean, in August this year, he's 70. He's still jumping at the top level all across the world. 2 weeks ago, he was in Mexico, jumping in the Global Champions Tour, and came second in the major Grand Prix there. This is not somebody who's been a sportsman who's a flash in the pan, and I think his legacy will live on in show jumping for many, many years to come. There will never be another John Whitaker.
And I think there was a line in the book that just sums it up. Still beating the best at their game. Why stop? And it's just incredible at his age to still be doing that.
He is. I think the saddest thing for me, perhaps, about where he is currently, is that he is short of Grand Prix horses.
Yeah.
And that is affecting how he can get up the rankings list. It can affect the shows that he goes to.
Yeah.
That's how the system works today. And personally, I cannot understand why there aren't owners in the world who want John to ride their horses. That there isn't anybody better they could give a horse to.
No, that came across in the book, and it's quite surprising, really.
And I asked him about this in the book, and he says he thinks that owners want to give riders, younger riders,
the
horses today. But I can't buy into that at all.
No.
I've seen the one thing that you can get from the book above anything else, I think, is that John has turned average horses into exceptional horses.
Yeah.
Certainly at the start of his career, he never had horses that were particularly well known. He got horses to jump courses that nobody ever believed they would.
Yeah.
That was true right from the start with Ryan's Son. Milton was the exception, probably, out of those horses. But if you look at Gammon and Granouche, even John himself didn't believe they would achieve what they did achieve in their lifetime. So, for me, every owner out there should be looking at John.
Why wouldn't you want John to ride your horse?
Yeah, absolutely. If I had the money, I wouldn't hesitate.
No. So how did you manage to get so much valuable and authentic information from other famous equestrians? How did you do that? Well,
this is interesting, because I think this sums up how John is regarded among his peers. There isn't a single rider in the world who I approached who wouldn't discuss John with me and didn't have 100% brilliant things to say about him. I think if you go out and you interview all sorts of people from different walks of life about practically any sportsman out there, there will be some negativity that comes up.
Yeah.
with John there was not a single point of negativity. Every rider got back to me, was really happy to talk to me, told their stories, and every one of them was 1000% supportive of John and what he's achieved. And even other top riders in the world, like Ludger Verbum, for example, you know, say that he helped them in their careers, you know.
Yeah.
And I think this is something that has changed. Other people wouldn't agree with me, but I do think going back to John's biggest era, perhaps with Milton in the 30s, when he was 40, perhaps, riders did talk and help each other, and they did watch jump-offs together.
Yeah.
And they did say, there's a lovely story with Ludger, you know, in Paris-Bercy, where, you know, the two of them were watching on the arena camera in the warm-up area, and Ludger said, I think there's a turn to that double, and John had Wellham at this point. And John said, oh, I don't know, it looks very tight. This was in the jump off. And he said, but when I go in, I'll have a look. And if I do it, you've got to do it. So Ludger said, okay, he would do it. And John went in and did the turn, and in fact won the class, because Ludger went in afterwards and his horse refused when he turned up. And you know, and little stories like that, I don't think that camaraderie exists anymore.
No, I don't, personally, from my experience. And the learning, the way that, you know, you talk about them learning from each other and learning from watching, you know, back in the day, that's what we did as children. You know, we watched people that were better than us and we were inspired. And I don't see that so much now.
No, I think that's another very good point. And again, you know, today's young riders, they don't watch the whole class. They do their round and then they go back to the horse box. They throw the horse at the groom, you know, and that's another big point in John's story, I think. You know, when he's at home, he tacks up the horses himself. He spends time in the stable with them. He knows how they're feeling. He gets inside their character, and they love him. They want to jump for him. They trust him implicitly. And he goes into every class believing that he can win and believing he can jump a clear round.
Yeah.
And that, to me, was one of the strongest lines of the book, because I wondered how he had got that level of mentality. And he puts it very much down to his father. And I think this is a lesson that we can all learn from reading the book, that parents have a big role to play with young people coming up.
Yeah, definitely.
How many times have I seen a mother, you know, a child comes out of the arena, had 4 faults, and the parents start screaming and shouting at the child and grabbing the pony. They don't support them. And John says his father was incredible. I think at one point he says that, you know, he could go in the ring and have 8 fences down, and he'd jump 1 clear, and he'd come out and his father would say to him, that was great, son, you know, that you jumped that number 8 really brilliantly. He'd forget about the other, you know, the other fences he'd had down.
And that helped him to then go back in the next day and go clear and move forward. You know,
I mean, there was a notorious time when he went the first time to a big show, went to the Great Yorkshire Show. And he went the first day and had pretty much a disaster with both the horses that he had there. And he went home that night and he said to his dad, I don't think I want to go back tomorrow, you know, I'm not ready for this. And he was jumping against Harvey Smith and people like that at that point. And his father said, you know, I've paid for the entries, you're going to go back tomorrow and tomorrow will be different. And the next day he went back and won.
And it was, it's fantastic to have that support. And just to see the humble background where it all began is just fantastic.
Well, that you know, that again is something I think that perhaps we can say was different then, but I'm not sure how different. I mean, he came from a very normal background, if you like, where there were 4 brothers living in a house, and he and Michael, his other very well-known brother, as we all know, he and Michael shared the same double bed till they were 17 years old.
Incredible.
And then, of course, there was always the fight for the clothes in the morning, because the parents used to remake and resize the clothes themselves. His mother, Enid, did. And whoever got up last got the girls' breeches. So there was always a fight for that. And they would never be buying new tack, you know, they'd use the same tack, it would always be immaculately looked after. I think that was something that Enid drummed into them. The tack and the horses always had to be immaculate and had to pass her inspection before they went off to a show.
No, really, really great family life, upbringing, role models.
Yes, and I think maybe one of the things that helped John a lot as well was because they had nothing. I mean, he started with horses, with taking the milk cart round, you know, because his uncle had a dairy herd and he used to deliver milk before he went to school. Then that same pony would be taken off the milk cart, and John would ride it bareback with just a head collar across the fields to school every day.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, a different way of life, really, to now.
Totally.
Hard to imagine, yet not that long ago either. It's
not that long ago.
It just shows how much things have changed in the short time.
And I do sort of think, I know that people say it's not possible to do this today. I think you've got to remember two things. First of all, you have to have an innate skill and ability. If you haven't got that, at the end of the day, you're not going to get anywhere. No. I do like to think that if you've got that skill and you're prepared to work really hard, and I mean really hard, and I don't think a lot of today's youngsters understand how hard they've got to work. Horses are not a 9-to-5 job.
No,
you know,
definitely not.
And you know that,
yeah.
and I know that. So I think, you know, I think there are opportunities for people, but they have to be prepared to travel. They have to be prepared to go and learn from people. They have to take every opportunity that comes their way with both hands.
Yeah.
And they have to be prepared to work very hard.
Yeah. Did you learn anything new about John along the way? You obviously know him very well anyway, but did you find out anything surprising?
Yes, I found a lot actually. I think one of the key things was how humble he is, and how honest. I mean, he certainly told me everything, the good, the bad, the indifferent. He never hesitated to trust me, and I think that was a big thing for me and why the book became such a passion for me.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I was frightened that I wasn't going to do it justice.
Yeah.
When I'd actually written it and it had been cleared and it had gone to the printers and there was that sort of agonising wait of about a month for it to actually come off the press, I started getting extremely nervous about how it was going to be received by people, because particularly on social media, people can be very unpleasant.
Oh gosh, yeah.
You know, and one bad review can really affect sales.
Unfortunately.
And I was very worried about how people would read it, but very fortunately I've had nothing but really fantastic reviews.
Yeah.
And I think it was helped by the fact that I have got a very easy writing style, and what I didn't want it to become was just a list of successes.
No, it is definitely a story.
Yes, absolutely. And so I think I came to admire John even more than I had done growing up. And to me, I was really honoured, and I mean that in the best possible way, to be able to write his book. I mean, when I grew up knowing about John and Michael, my daughter who went on to jump for Great Britain, she had a lesson from Michael. I can remember getting an Everest jacket, because they used to be sponsored by Everest, and she wore that in the ring, you know.
Oh, wow.
That was how they were big fans of the Whitakers.
Yeah.
So to actually be spending the time with him that I did was a real honour, and I'm not saying that in some sort of sycophantic way. It was a dream come true, if you like, to be able to write the book, and I think anyone who's passionate about show jumping would have felt like I did writing the book.
Yeah, and I think your passion comes through in the book, really.
It's also what kept me writing it. I mean, I was very disciplined about writing it. The whole book, from starting to being published, was 10 months, which is not very long.
No.
Especially when you have to get things cleared, you have to chase down riders.
Yeah,
you know, who are
that's
competing
including
all
your
over the world.
research and.
But yeah, it was great. And as I say, I had worked with John before. I had done the original video about Milton with John and Clare at their yard, so they knew they could work with me, and I think that really helped as well.
Yeah, so that relationship was
so
very
we'd done
well
a tour.
established.
We'd done something called the Simply the Best tour, where Milton in effect retired, going around show centres in the UK.
Yeah, and I went to watch that tour.
Oh, did you? Right.
And I have an autograph from John and Jeff on a little sticker. But then the sticker is then stuck to a poster that was then on my bedroom wall
Oh,
for
wonderful.
years, and it's now carefully packed away in a box, ready to come out again one day when we finished our renovations. But I think it's just incredible that you were involved in that, because it was huge. I just remember it being
Oh, it was huge.
Huge.
I mean, Milton was the dream horse for so many people.
Yeah.
And I think the fact he was grey really helped.
Yeah.
I mean, he was very eye-catching, but he was also an incredible horse. And I think one of the saddest things about Milton was that, he never got to go to the Olympics in Seoul. And when he did go in Barcelona, it didn't work out.
No.
And I think, one of the saddest bits, in a way, to come out of the book is the fact that John has never won an Olympic medal. He's been to the Olympics. He won team silver in Atlanta many years ago with Ryan's son.
Yeah.
But he has tried to get to the Olympics quite a few times, and something's gone wrong every time.
Yeah, that's quite interesting to read in the book, because that so many successes, and yet the sort of success at the Olympics has always been just out of reach.
Yes, and of course, for Paris, he got a French horse to ride, Arcana de Riverland. I think he actually got the mare in January, and obviously the qualification for the Olympics was sort of March, April time. I can't remember the exact date, and unfortunately that didn't work out either. And he was hoping that mare would take him. But I've said to him, "What about Los Angeles?" And he said, "Well, I'm going to be 73 then. I'll need a stepladder by that age." But who knows? I think riders have gone to the Olympics. I think several have gone when they're in their 70s. Ian Miller, I think, went. So it's possible with the right horse.
Yeah.
I always remember that Ludger said to me, "John doesn't need to worry about not winning an Olympic medal, because people come and go with the Olympics. We've had a lot of medals from one-off partnerships, and the riders won't be written in the books of history. John will be written in the books of history in the show jumping world forever."
Yeah, definitely. So I personally have read and enjoyed the book, and reread several parts of it again. Can you tell us about the key themes in the book, and if there are any particularly sort of memorable parts of the book for you personally?
Yeah, I think one of the key themes is John's mantra, which I'm going to say is keep it simple. I think that's something I learnt, and I would go back if I had horses again today and really get that into my children's life. I think right from the very beginning he would say to his father, "Oh, this horse has got a bit strong, I think we need to change the bit." And his father would say, "No, we'll do that last of all. We'll try the basics first. We'll put the horse out in the field more.
Yeah.
We'll change its feed."
And I love that. I love, you see so many horses that are overbitted to
Yes.
suit let's say, the weaknesses of the rider.
Yeah.
And it's not pretty.
Nearly always you will see that John's horses are ridden in a snaffle.
Yeah, that's just great.
Sharad is perhaps a slight example, because I know he's very strong. But on the whole, if you look back over the years, you'll see his horses go in a lovely rhythm, and he's got incredible hands, very soft hands.
Yeah.
So I think that was one of the things that kept coming up through the book in different ways, that keep things simple, and don't ever expect too much from your horse. He says a lot of people give up on horses because they ask them to jump things they're not capable of jumping.
Yeah.
And it's a common mistake for somebody to see a horse that they think is really good, but the rider is messing it up.
Yeah.
And he said, don't believe that, because that horse might go in that particular way for that rider, and once you get it, and you try to change it to your way. I think that's the key thing as well. He's never tried to change a horse.
No, I love that, and I love the concept. There's really no such thing as a bad horse.
Yeah.
That the rider should be adapting to the horse and not vice versa. I think if young sort of riders of today could take that all on board, they would be going further, faster.
I think that's very true, because I think you do find that a lot of top riders can only ride a particular type of horse.
Yeah.
They're not capable of changing their riding to suit the horse, and that's absolutely what John does. None of his horses have gone in the same way, in my view.
No.
And I also think the fact that, you know, he has, I'm going to say he's fallen down rather than he's fallen off so many times. He's had really bad days. You know, the Olympics is one example. You know, going to the Olympics with Peppermill, he was, you know, really expected to do well and had great hopes. And then, you know, on day 2, Peppermill couldn't move, you know, was tied up in the stable and couldn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
And I think so. Then, of course, he had his aneurysm in Sweden and nearly died. And the amazing thing for me about that was that 6 months later he was back there riding. And I think his doctor, he was very lucky that Clare was with him.
Yeah.
And she knew what was happening. He was very lucky he was near the top neurological hospital at the time in Sweden.
Yeah.
And they sorted it out. But one of the things that really surprised me when we were talking is that he still has some aneurysms in his head today.
Yeah.
And he knows they're there, but they've told him that they won't affect him. But your fear then of falling off and hitting your head, it must be there. John says it isn't.
He says it isn't. I find that incredible.
I know.
And that's a real mind over matter. I mean, it's clear throughout the whole book that he's not scared. He doesn't think about bad things or negative things, and to be successful he believes that you shouldn't have those feelings. If you have those feelings, it's not right for you, and that's it's just amazing that he can get through life in that mindset, really.
I think his children are more worried about him having a bad fall today than
I should imagine.
Is, you know. And I know all of them, Joanne particularly, and Louise, have said to me they can't understand why he has to ride the young horses at home now and you know, basically break them in when they're 4 years old, because he is taking chances, clearly.
It's more risky.
But he wants them to go in the way that he wants them to go for later on in life, so that early training is very important.
Yeah.
So I think that was one of the things that really came out of the book for me, was his total commitment to going in the ring and doing the best he can, and to pick himself up so many times when things went wrong. Yeah. You know.
And I'm sure that's one of the reasons that he's still successful to this day.
Yeah.
Because mentally, there's not many people that can keep bouncing back and bouncing back and bouncing back.
No, I agree totally. I think his commitment to the sport is still huge. And the other thing that really came out as well was how willing he is to help people. Mm-hmm. You know, you've only got to ask him a question and he will answer you the best he can. Yeah. And there is so much that people could learn from him. So I really hope people will see this as a classic book that they must read, and I hope parents will buy it and get their children to read it.
Yeah. You know, you've touched on the fact that you think the world of horses has changed.
Yes, they have changed, because I mean I can look back at my own daughter when she was in Young Riders. Well, in ponies we bought, you know, I'll tell you, we bought the most expensive pony on the circuit, and it won her 3 European medals, 2 individual gold and the individual silver. Yeah. A lot of people thought I was mad buying the pony, and I bought it unseen. Okay. Actually. So that was a history in itself. Yeah. But we could buy a young rider Grand Prix horse at the time for £50,000, roughly, a good one, you know, that would get her on a European team in juniors and young riders. Today you've got to add at least another naught to that figure. And I think when it started to change quite a long time ago now, I think the Americans got very big in the sport. The Far East now is very big in the sport. Japan, the Philippines, places where there are riders and owners with a lot of money. I mean, you just look at some of the names that are jumping in America today. Bruce Springsteen's daughter, for example. You know, and I'm not just picking on her, but they obviously have the opportunity to buy the horses, and the horses' value has gone up. Yeah. So I think for somebody wanting to achieve these levels now, unless you can find a very wealthy owner, and that's another issue, because my own view is that we don't look after owners enough, well enough, especially not in the UK at shows. There's not a lot in it for an owner unless they're winning a lot of prize money, or unless they have a stallion where there's a really good breeding value from the stallion, for example. I think the only way to do it is to breed your own horses and be very patient, and to breed the best that you can with the best bloodlines that you can. Yeah. And I think you just have to be very patient and produce the horses. And You know, John's now got quite a nice breeding enterprise, you know, and Argento, I know, is producing some very nice horses for him. You know, Vermento, who Robert's got at the World Cup final, you know, is one of those.
Yeah.
And I think that's important, but I do also think that if you can get an opportunity to go and be based with a rider, with a top rider, wherever it is in the world, you need to go. You need to sacrifice other things to go, because you will get opportunities then. You'll get opportunities to ride young horses, different experiences, different shows.
Be immersed in
yes,
that way of learning and training as well. Yeah.
And I know your daughter Roxy is very fortunate because she's going to spend time at the Whitakers from this May, I think, and that's a huge opportunity that very few people would get today.
An absolute once in a lifetime opportunity.
It is,
I should imagine.
and she needs to grasp that with both hands. And no matter how homesick she is, or how sad she is, or how much she misses you, she's got to
suck
absolutely. She has, and that will be the making of her.
Yeah,
it really will. I can remember when Malin Barnyard Johnson went there, you know, to begin with, and she stayed. She went for a few months and ended up staying for 3 years. Yeah, you know, and that made her the rider that she is today, and she says so in the book. She, you know, no hesitation at all that gave her the opportunity. You know, and her family weren't particularly supportive. I think they wanted her to be a vet. Yes. You know, and she was very clever, but she chose horses, and she's won a lot all around the world. Yeah. You know, and still riding today. Yeah,
I know, it's great. And how they're involved in the pony club, young riders, bringing on the next generations. It's incredible. It's incredible how much they manage to fit in as a family, really. You know,
I know. Well, I think Clare is amazing as well.
Put some of this to shame, I think.
Well, Clare is incredible because her role with British show jumping takes her, you know, she's away at the moment, takes her all over the world. Yeah. You know, with the children's teams and everything. And I think also, you know, she is absolutely, I think I describe her as the power behind the throne, and that's really no exaggeration. You know, moving horses around the world today. Getting all your entries right, getting the horses in the right place at the right time, getting the right stuff on the wagon to drive around Europe. You know, it's a huge mission.
And couldn't be done without her.
No, absolutely not. No. One thing I should say was this book was published by Clare, John and me in partnership. We didn't go to a publisher for it because you earn so little money. You would never recoup your costs, unless you're a Jeffrey Archer or the like, who sells, you know, 1 million books.
So that's really good advice for anybody that's
so anyone who's thinking of doing it, self-publish it, be brave, do it yourself, set up a website, as we have done, to sell the book from. It is available as a digital book also on on Amazon. And the book itself is available on Amazon, although we've changed the ownership of the book and it's proving to be very difficult to get it back on Amazon. But it will be back on Amazon, but I would much prefer people to buy it from our website.
So the link for the website is listed in the description below, along with the links for the digital versions. But obviously, as an author and a publisher, the direct link is better for everyone concerned.
Well, it is, because, you know, it is costly. I mean, you know, it is costly to print the book. And I think a lot of people miss that. And there were things like having to buy all the right authorities to use the photographs, and some of them went back a long time. And tracing the people who actually originally taken the photographs wasn't easy. Because
things that people don't even think about.
40 years. You know? So there was a lot of research and work done there.
What can John say now? You know, does he say, yes, you were right, Sarah?
No, I don't think he would say that. But I think he's very pleased with how it's gone. I think he's really happy now to have told his story and to see it in words, and I think it's something that he can enjoy. He certainly enjoyed writing it at the end with me. I really tried to keep his words as his words. I think that was very important.
Even with the northern accent coming through.
Yes, even with the Yorkshire accent. And I think a lot of his compatriots, if you like, have been surprised at how much he has said and how much he's talked very openly through the book. And that's the one thing that really comes out of it for me, is he's totally inspirational. He's totally honest. Even the sad things, you know,
Yeah.
even, you know, a sad story was, of course, in Barcelona with Milton when he came. Milton had stopped in that combination, and when he came out, and he said to me that, you know, it was the first time he ever felt he had to make Milton jump.
Yes.
And Milton had to get round for the British
because
team.
it was the Olympics.
Because it was the
Yeah,
Olympics.
yeah.
And when he came out and got off and realised that the sand had rubbed into his fetlocks, you know,
Yeah.
and he was sore, he
felt
dreadful,
awful. Yeah.
you know. And I think that kind of honesty, I'd never read that anywhere, you know,
No.
and that kind of honesty was something that makes this book very special. And I don't think there'll ever be another book like it, to be frank.
No, a real insight to him as a family man as
Yes.
well.
Yeah.
Private, personal information almost to do with being ill, to do with times when the children were young. I think that's probably quite rare from a biography.
Yeah, I mean, it's like plaiting his daughter's hair
Yeah.
before she went to school. And the practical jokes that he played on people as well. People in the sport would know he's quite a character, but other people wouldn't know that he plays these practical jokes on people, you know. And I think they're very illuminating in the book as well, some of the things that he's done. I had a lovely review actually just the other day on Amazon, which said that from somebody who said that she'd written many biographies and had she'd read many biographies and she'd had to stop reading them because they were written so badly and hadn't actually portrayed someone at all. So it was with some trepidation that she bought this book.
Yes.
Because she had been such a fan of John's, but
Yeah.
she needn't have worried at all. She loved every minute of it, and it was brilliantly written.
Yeah.
And that's actually really lovely, and it couldn't have been well written if John hadn't given me the content.
No.
I really want to say that. It was absolutely the right unison of two people.
Yeah.
You know, my writing skill, if you like, and John's story.
And I think that there needs to be, you know, a real emphasis on the value that the reader can get from the book. It really does go a step above the average biography.
Thank you.
You know,
I think that was important too, and funnily enough, people asked me what was the hardest bit to write in the book. The hardest bit to write was about Milton, because so much had been written about Milton, and I wanted it to be different, and I needed it to be different. And I have to say that I didn't read anything that anyone else had written about Milton or about John in the writing of this book, because I didn't want it to be coloured by what other people had said.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure that many books have been written with such passion and attention to detail and such commitment from both the subject and the author. I think that really shines through.
Thank you.
And you're obviously a credit to John and his family.
Thank you.
And congratulations for that. You clearly have stories to tell yourself. How has writing this book made you think about your next steps in life? Has it influenced what you plan for the future? What have you taken from this experience as an author?
I think I've learnt that I did already know, I guess, but I'm very passionate about writing.
Yeah.
I've been a journalist and then a marketeer, a PR consultant for many years, and I want to spend, if you like, want to call it my twilight years, still writing.
Yes.
I'm not sure that I want to write another biography of a show jumper, because I'm not sure that anything could ever be as good as writing John's story.
Yeah.
I have talked about doing another rider, but I haven't decided to do that. I'm going to write quite different things. I'm going to write a dog recipe book.
A dog recipe book?
Yes.
Not cooking the dogs, cooking
No,
for the
no,
dogs.
definitely
cooking
not.
for the dogs.
Cooking for the dog. Mainly because I think a lot of people now want to feed dogs raw and want to feed them naturally.
Yeah.
I think there's a big move to this.
Yeah.
It will only be an e-book, but it's how I feed my dogs, and I want to write that, and I want to incorporate some recipes from around the world, from other dog owners, if you like. And I've also been very fortunate in that I spent 2 months travelling in Australia and New Zealand recently. And I wrote a blog each day I was away.
Yeah,
and
I followed that.
I'm going to turn that into a book, so that an e-book again, so that people who want to go to Australia and New Zealand have a plan to follow, if you like.
Yeah.
With
It's
my
one thing that really
experience.
came across, and in fact I asked you as soon as I saw you, how did you know what to do? How did you know where to go?
Yeah.
The daily updates that you gave really made you want to live it for yourself.
Yes,
you know?
it was interesting. A lot of people said that they felt they were on the journey
Yeah,
with me.
yeah.
So I felt that was a good thing to write.
Yeah.
I have written a children's book, and I'm pleased to say my daughter now is becoming a bit of an author as well, and she also has written an e-book.
So she's taking after mum.
Well, I don't know about that, but she writes very well, and she's always been an absolutely brilliant gift giver. You know, when she comes up with something for me or for my husband Vince, it's always something that we've always wanted but never realised we wanted.
Yeah.
So I think her book on buying the right gifts for people is a really good guide for people, and I hope people will buy that and see that as well.
Yeah, and again, we'll put the link to that book down below. Thank you so much to Sarah Peacocke for that fantastic interview and conversation about writing the biography for John Whitaker, the legend. Sarah kindly answered my questions and gave me so much more. I hope you found value in this video. If so, don't forget to leave a comment below. Show your appreciation for the author and the time that she's given up to share behind the scenes insights into the world of John Whitaker. Don't forget, in the description below are all the links that you need if you want to purchase a paperback version of the book, a digital version. If you're interested in any of the things that Sarah and I have talked about in the video, then take a look in the notes below and you'll find everything that you need. As discussed in the interview, the value for money is just absolutely phenomenal. The insights that you get into the equestrian world, tips, advice, thoroughly recommend it to any serious equestrian. Bye for now, guys.